Hi, I'm Eddie Obeng, and this is How. Daily, I bring you a different way to make your world actually work the way you would like it to. Uh, Today's is a special one. It's something that I learned from watching three different organizations. It's about when have you heard of change overload? You know, when the organization is going through so much change, no one knows what's going on. There's too much being done. And let's jump onto Cube and I'll tell you all about change overload and how to overcome it using integrated change management. So welcome to Cube. This is a quick study cubicle. So it's based on the small cubicles, but it's for people who are on programs or courses or long workshops where you get your own space. So we always encourage them to put a little quote here, which is their favorite quote, give them a little inspirational view out here, looking up the hills, a couple of things on the desk there, somewhere to put their work. Generally, there's a huge board, which is a learning board. This is for a course. And so you can see all the course modules have been mapped out here, and the participant has been writing down either with sticky notes or commenters what they've been learning over the period of time. There's obviously a big screen for when you meet people. And then there are, of course, spaces for things like exercises, the overall timetable, which you're working to. There's a door to the main cubicle where you'll be probably running your course in or working in. So that's always very, very helpful. And then there's the classic hopes and fears boards, along with, there you go, I've just jumped across to the other cubicle. I'll jump us back. And then there's the classic hopes and fears boards, which allow you to do your preparation and you're rapid to know what you're doing, because you've got a massive learning board over here with a lander log, you know, what happened, what I learned was how I'm going to apply it, results achieved. So the net result is you can actually work in here and you can bring your colleagues in here, your boss, and so on, and show them what you've done. People coming in, they've got a little guide to tell them what every single space in the cubicle does. And then if there are different exercises they're working with the colleagues on, they'll probably be here. But integrated change management, overload. What is change overload? I'll tell you, the first time I bumped into change overload, I was working in a company called Glaxo, and the people were complaining because they were basically running from one project review meeting where they just sort of finished discussing it to the next project review meeting to the next project. And they do this all day without ever having a chance to have a break or to actually think about anything. So they weren't doing the work because they were in meetings talking about the projects which were running late. So I invented a project called Project. And the job of Project was to kill off all the projects to create space so people could get the work done. So that was a surprise to me. I didn't realize it was possible for an organization to get itself into that sort of tangle. But if you initiate change very quickly, remember, first law of change, one change leads to another. So it's quite easy to get a process going, which just drives the change. Second time I had it was with the Bank of Ireland. And they had very similar situation to the Glaxo one, where they had so many projects, they were trying to deliver them all. They were all running late. Everything was overloaded. Everyone was spending too much money. So what I did there was I got them to have a day of death. Basically, we had a big wall. We wrote down all the projects. We stuck them on the wall. And then we said, which ones can we kill? And we worked out which ones we could kill in order to make the space to get the other ones done. Third one was working with a company called Tesco. And they were running these projects and they couldn't get the projects out into the business. And so when I dug into what I discovered was that there was a limited amount of training time for the staff on the tills, because it's a supermarket. And so all the projects which had to go through the staff being trained were being held up by this limited time. So that's why the projects weren't actually reaching the front line and actually going to customers. So by scheduling the time which was spent on the training and deciding which projects to move forward and backwards, we were able to then, in an orderly way, put the projects through. So that got me thinking. I thought, why is it organizations end up with change overload? And I discovered that the reason was very straightforward. The way organizations are organized is they're organized very much in a pyramid. There's the bosses at the top, there's the projects, there's the people, there's the customers outside, and so on. So often it's a hierarchy. And these people have different functions. The functions are usually to do with their skills, marketing, sales, HR, etc. And if they're at the top of the organization, they also have an extra job to do with their skills, which is about strategy or vision or mission or something like that. And so the strategy development happens up here. And then maybe some papers are produced, but nobody's actually coordinating the process. So the strategy will generate programs, but nobody's saying how many programs, how much time is this program going to take? These days, some organizations with PMOs might try and do that sort of thing to make sure there's a link between the strategy and the programs. But generally, they just sort of happen. They have to be done, they're initiatives. The programs then spill out into projects. Again, there's a connection there sometimes with the PMO, but often the projects happen. Sometimes projects just come in because there's a crisis and something must be done. We've been hacked, we've got to do something immediately, and so on. So there's a whole bunch of projects over here. Then there are the people who are being bombarded, like the people on the tills, with all this change. So there's a change management process, which means that you get people engaged and wanting to move. And then of that change management process, if the projects are things which are ongoing, there's a process, a day-to-day selling to customers or something like that, which then generates benefits to the customers. The customers are happy with it. They give you back money. The money then comes back into the process, and then it informs the strategy of what can we invest in next. So it's actually a dynamic thing. So I put this diagram together to try and help people understand that unless they actually manage this whole flow of processes, you end up with change overload. It's inevitable. And then along the top of this diagram, if we go in closer, there's a little formula which says strategy development plus change management for project management for program management plus process management equals integrated change management. Now, what does that mean? I'll share with you what I found in terms of the different roles. So strategy development is really about creating the strategy to make it work. So you've got to make sure, you've got some people making sure that this is actually going to work. Then you have to add that to your program management. And program management is active management benefits. You can look at this later. Interpreting as a single, a direct strategic outcome, and make sure the project deliverables are actually linked, and that as the projects are happening, you can feed them back into the strategy in case the strategy needs to change. Change management is about people. If you don't get the people right, you're already in big trouble. So focus on the people, especially the politics. Remember, any big change is going to change the power structure. Therefore, there'll be politics. Therefore, if you remember what Machiavelli said, you're going to get lukewarm support and so on and so forth. So those are those elements. And then you've got the project management, actually chunking it up so you've got deliverable things which you can see. And then you've got process management, the day-to-day flow of activities, making sure you haven't got bottlenecks in the wrong places so you can actually deliver the outcomes. And this is just like a little diagram with all of them on there, just to summarize everything. So integrated change management is a way of making sure you never end up overloaded ever again, by making sure the people who have the roles know that they're connected to other people, having a dialogue and a process where they can meet and align, and make sure, and this is my rule of thumb, that there's always plenty of holes. Never ever plan anything to actually absorb more than 60 or 70% of the time or resource available, because that 30%, something will come along and fill it. Either you'll end up having to do some rework or something new will come in. And once things butt up against each other, they stop. This will have happened to you, and I'll leave it as your last image. You're driving along the motorway, then suddenly you come to a stop, and then you speed up again. And you go, what was that? And there's nothing. Sometimes there's nothing. What happened was the cars are all interdependent. One person slowed down too much. The other person had to slow down, and it knocks all the way down until you have to stop. And so when you have lots of change in an organization, that's why you need the gaps so that they never get too close so you can keep running. So that's strategy, integrated change management. Read the newsletter because you'll get much more out of it. Make sure you subscribe to the newsletter. Bring your colleagues because you can't do integrated change management on your own. Guess what? And there's a quick guide. There's always a quick guide. I've been Eddie Obeng, and this is how.